Wow, what a crowd. Thanks for coming. I think we have the bugs worked out and we've gotten the green light from Stephen Bassett, so we'll go ahead, and thanks very much for your patience. I know you understand and appreciate the incredible effort that everyone has put into this. Ted St. Rain and Lori from Enterprise Mission and Jennifer. Lost Arts Media obviously has been working overtime, and I need a little bit more light up here just so I can see in the dark. If we could before we start. Thank you so much. And obviously, you know, your next guest is Linda Moulton Howe, and I might say that it's my pleasure to welcome her to the podium. We are former colleagues. In an earlier life, Linda and I worked together at KMGH, a CBS affiliate in Denver, Colorado, and we could tell you some stories. You want some stories? We could tell you some stories. But she's a graduate of Stanford University with a master's degree in communication. I'm going to run through this fairly quickly, but Linda has such an extensive background that we felt it was necessary, even though we're running a little late, that we go ahead and reiterate this because it is very critical to her body of work. She's devoted her documentary film, television, and radio career to productions concerning science, medicine, and the environment. She's received so many local, national, and international awards, including 3 Emmys and a National Emmy nomination. Her films have included Poison in the Wind, these films that have received awards, A Sun-Kissed Poison, which compared smog pollution in Los Angeles and Denver, Fire in the Water, that was about hydrogen as an alternative energy source to fossil fuels, A Radioactive Water, which was about uranium contamination of public drinking water in a Denver suburb, and A Strange Harvest, which explored the worldwide animal mutilation mystery which has haunted the United States and other countries from the mid-20th century to date. She's also received numerous honors, including as a medical producer in Boston's WCVB Station Excellence Peabody Award. She received the Aviation and Aviation and Space Writers Association Award for Writing Excellence in Television, a Golden Plaque Award, and another Emmy Award for Poison in the Wind and A Sun-Kissed Poison. She has received the Ohio State Awards for Fire in the Water and Borrowed Faces. Actor Robert Redford, founder of the Sundance Film Festival and prominent environmentalist, also presented Linda with a Citizens Participation Award from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for television documentaries about air pollution and energy alternatives to fossil fuels. Tremendous amount of documentary and writing work, and awards for those were Earthbeat, which was an environmental series broadcast on Ted Turner's WTBS Superstation in Atlanta, Georgia. Ted, someone I used to work for as well at CNN. The World of Chemistry for PBS, and also she has produced an update to her original documentary, A Strange Harvest, about the continuing worldwide animal mutilation mystery in her independent production, Strange Harvest 1993. And she goes on, and she is contracted with Paramount Studios as a supervising producer and original concept creator for an hour special on her Earth Mysteries program. That hour, UFO Reports Sightings, was first broadcast on the Fox network. She's written 4 books. One, An Alien Harvest, that investigates the animal mutilation phenomenon, and Glimpses of Other Realities, volumes 1 and 2, which concern the U.S. military, intelligence, and civilian testimonies about other forces that interact with Earth life. Her 4th book, Mysterious Lights and Crop Circles, updated in a 2nd edition with expanded 2001 content released in July of 2002. That is an investigative report about scientific research of unusual formations in cereal crops and grasses around the world, and videotapes, photographs, eyewitness descriptions of the mysterious small lights associated with the crop formation. She continues to write, produce, and speak at a variety of conferences and symposiums around the world, including NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. In addition to producing, reporting, and editing earthfiles.com, you can find all of her books and so on her site, earthfiles.com. She also produces, writes, and reports for television, radio. That includes the Discovery Channel and the weekly science and environmental Earth Mystery News Report for the nationally syndicated Clear Channels Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Also, she can be heard on the internet's Dreamland online. So, if that isn't enough, here's more with Linda. She has a little more to tell you about. It is my pleasure to welcome Linda Moulton Howe.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience today. It's the technical details in life that always get us. And I want first to thank Ted St. Rain and Jennifer Stein and Steve Bassett and all those who have worked really hard in here this afternoon to bring this equipment back into focus, because I do have something special to share with you with Bill Hamilton's permission on Dan Burish in his own words. So first, I'd like to give a round of applause to these people who have worked for the last 40 minutes. And I wanted to check, is the volume in the back of the room good for everybody? Okay, good. How many people have read every word and page of the Psalm 101 document? I see 2 or 3 hands. I can't see all the way. How many people have read every word and every page of the bound, majestic 12 documents that Bob and Ryan Wood prepared? A few more. They are both so important, and I'm going to focus on this today. And part of what Steve Bassett has brought together in the last 7 months with the X Conference is to focus on a subject that some government insiders have known about for a long time, but that it is still not politically acceptable to discuss in most of this planet, and that is extraterrestrial biological entities, their technologies, and their interactions with the planet as a viable reality. For 25 years as an investigative reporter, I have tried to find facts about the important question, what does the United States government actually know about entities and technologies from UFO crash retrievals, which have provoked an American policy of misinformation and denial in the interests of national security since at least 1947, while at the same time, that same American government and corporations have back-engineered the very same alien technology that they deny exists. Back in 1983, while working on the documentary project for Home Box Office, which was then entitled UFOs, the ET Factor, I met an elderly rancher who lived in Corona, New Mexico. And he said that he had known Mac Brazel, the rancher who found strange debris on his land, and went to the Roswell sheriff to report his discovery on July 4th, 1947. And that Corona resident told me, quote, "I heard there was a horrible secret about that crash," unquote. Perhaps the answer to the horrible secret is why there has been an official American policy ever since to deny ET existence at all costs. And today in 2004, perhaps what we should add to ET is possible time traveler, possible other dimensional, possible parallel universe, and perhaps even angelic. To deny that any of this exists at all costs. That policy apparently began with the fear and shock that President Truman and his close associates felt when they allegedly learned that dissected humanoids and animal parts were found inside and near at least 2 of the UFOs that crashed in New Mexico in 1947, according to the bound Majestic 12 documents. Animal parts takes me back to September 1979, when I began my first research into the worldwide mystery called animal mutilations. And if we could have a slight dimming, because now I'm going to start working with slides. As some of you know from my earlier presentations, I began to investigate the worldwide animal mutilation phenomenon back in the fall of 1979 for the very first time. I graduated from Stanford University with a master's degree in communication, in which I made documentaries at the Stanford Medical Center and the Stanford Linear Accelerator. And then I was hired by the NBC television affiliate in Los Angeles, KNBC, to do street news reporting and documentaries. And then I worked also for Boston's ABC affiliate, producing all medical and science programming, and then became director of special projects at the CBS station, KMGH-TV, in Denver, Colorado. There I received a series of awards that Cheryl was going through, and I only say that not out of any inflation of anything. This is hard work, and I've always done it because I hate lies and I like truth. But when I began the investigation into the animal mutilations, it was in the context of a documentary filmmaker, a TV producer, and a reporter who had already worked for 11 years and who had received a lot of what is called journalistic awards, when I began to try to find out what was at the bottom of the animal mutilation mystery. And it was in the summer of 1979 that hundreds of animal mutilations of cattle and horses were reported in Colorado, again, as they had been since the 1960s. And as I began this work, which was to travel with Richard Lerner, who is my cameraman in this scene, and we're down in Walsenburg, where this bull steer, or it was a steer, had been found with the classic mutilations. We were on location. He and our audio guy and I, three of us, traveled in a station wagon for almost a month, with me flying by the seat of my pants, literally in a mystery that got deeper and deeper and stranger, and most everybody in law enforcement that I talked with would talk with me only off the record. And none of the veterinarians would talk with me on the record. And I knew that I was in a heck of a story because I was out amid the physical evidence of the animals. But when you, as a reporter, begin to find that the people in authority around you who actually have knowledge will not talk on the record, then you know that you're in a kind of unprecedented quicksand, which I was. And the result was a film called A Strange Harvest, which maybe some of you have seen. The bizarre bloodless animal mutilations were not happening only in Colorado. Animal mutilations were occurring all over the United States, Canada, and many other countries, all with the same pattern of tissue removed from the bodies. An ear, an eye, a circle of flesh around the eye, half the jaw flesh, the tongue removed, and a vertical cut deep within the throat, as in the Sterling, Colorado case back on July 26, 1977. And the steer in Caldwell, Kansas, discovered on January 31st, 1992. A veterinarian pathologist examined tissue from the mutilated excisions and confirmed that the cuts had been made with high heat. And this horse found dead and mutilated in Raymer, Colorado on June 22nd, 1993. The trachea and the esophagus had also been taken, along with sexual organs such as the complete udder on the cow in Benton County, Arkansas, back in 1993. Or like this cow from Newnan, Idaho, back on October 9th, 1989. All 4 teats had cleanly and bloodlessly been removed from the udder. 4 years later, on February 10th, 1993, in Grove Oak, Alabama, the penis and testicles were cleanly and bloodlessly removed from this young male calf. Rectal tissue is almost always taken from both sexes, such as this goat examined by a local veterinarian in Stella, Missouri on October 26, 1993. And vaginal cuts are often removed. Tissue is taken along with rectal tissue from the females, as in this cow in Alabama in 1993. Sometimes, along with the rectal and vaginal tissue, even tails are removed, as occurred in this Newnan, Idaho case in 1989. And these are excisions that have gone through the tail bones, and I have talked with veterinarians who have seen and examined them, and there is a glassy surface to the bone that they have all admitted they have absolutely no explanation for, but every single story in newspapers that I know, what I have talked with a vet, the newspapers from the local authorities always reported as predators bit through the tailbone. In fact, animals have been found dead and mutilated on wet sand without a single track around them, not even their own tracks. And dozens of times the excisions have had a serrated edge, which veterinarian pathologists have confirmed were made with high heat. Lasers are an obvious first thought, but the problem is animal excisions upon examination under a microscope do not have carbon residue, which is commonly found after veterinarian and human laser surgeries. Here's another serrated edge on a cow in Valier, Montana, found on October 6, 2001. In this 1995 Oregon case, the investigator shows the serrated edge in contrast to the scalpel cut he made to excise the tissue from the dead animal for analysis. And this is what a close-up view of some of the bizarre serrated edges look like that do not match any known veterinarian or medical cutting tool, but upon microscopic examination, all of these serrated edge cuts that I've had pathologists examine, all have been cut with something that cauterized, but the instrument remains unknown. That means all of this is done without blood, and to law enforcement's bafflement, never tracks, no signs of struggle in a discipline, a profession in which finding evidence, human evidence, tracks, cigarette butts, anything has been absent in the animal mutilation phenomenon. That is why law enforcement looked to the sky, and newspapers started illustrating what ranchers said that they had seen, like this drawing in the November 2nd, 1980 Greeley Tribune in Greeley, Colorado. And the United States military had knowledge of something coming from the skies and killing and mutilating animals around the world since at least the early 1950s, according to retired and now deceased Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso, as he reported in his important book, The Day After Roswell. In his book, Colonel Corso described many advanced technologies that the United States government retrieved from crashed non-human aircraft and back engineered. One of those technologies, according to Colonel Corso, was what came to be known as a laser scalpel in modern earth science. On page 47 of his book, Colonel Corso said, quote, "Why did the extraterrestrial inhabitants of the craft have a cutting device like this," meaning our current laser surgery like this used in an eye, "aboard their ship? It was not until later when I read highly classified military reports of cattle mutilations in which entire organs were removed without any visible trauma to the surrounding cell tissue that I realized that the light beam cutting torch was being used by the aliens in medical experiments on our livestock," unquote. Before he died, Colonel Corso talked to me in private about the many classified documents that he had seen in Washington, D.C. when he returned from his World War II assignment in Italy. He told me that he had read with his own eyes highly classified reports dated as early as 1951, which would be 4 years after the notorious Roswell, about animals found in several parts of the world with the bloodless excisions and no tracks around them that I have just shown you, same pattern. Colonel Corso told me that the classified reports specified that the animal mutilations were linked to, in the document that he was talking to me about, extraterrestrial biological entities, unquote, 1951. The subject was so sensitive, he told me, because the United States government was scared that if the public knew that something from outer space was able to pick up heavy animals in beams of light, remove tissue and liquids with instruments that cut with light, and then return the animals dead and mutilated to pastures, the Americans and the world would panic. Also, the advanced technologies needed to be kept out of the hands of human enemies and developed and patented by American companies. He said that was the first priority. Fear of public panic and desire to back-engineer the advanced technologies found in crashed UFOs is spelled out in the security section of the Psalm 101 document that many of you, I think, or a few of you, as the hands I could see, have seen before, perhaps at previous conferences, or you have gotten them from Bob and Ryan Wood. The Psalm 101's authenticity has generally held up over now. I know that Bob and Ryan Wood and I have talked about their ongoing efforts to authenticate, and I know that they are convinced for a variety of reasons that the Psalm 101 document is authentic. And Stanton Friedman may put it in his gray basket. Now the cover, Restricted Psalm 101, Majestic 12 Group Special Operations Manual, is entitled Extraterrestrial Entities in Technology Recovery and Disposal, Top Secret, Magic Eyes Only. Warning, this is a top secret, Magic Eyes Only document containing compartmentalized information essential to the national security of the United States. Eyes only access to this material herein is strictly limited to personnel possessing Magic 12 clearance level. Examination or use by unauthorized personnel is strictly forbidden and is punishable by federal law. This is a legitimate seal of the United States of America Office, War Office, used in the 1940s into the 1950s on official U.S. government documents. And below this, the War Office seal, it says, Majestic 12 Group, dated April 1954. Now we are at only 7 years after the controversial Roswell events. Then on page 2, under security classification for all activities conducted under the Psalm 101 training manual, it states, quote, all information relating to MJ-12 has been classified Magic Eyes Only and carries a security level 2 points above that of top secret. The reason for this has to do with the consequences that may arise not only from the impact upon the public should the existence of such matters become general knowledge, but also the danger of having such advanced technology as has been recovered by the United States Air Force fall into the hands of unfriendly foreign powers. No information is to be released to the public press, and the official government position is that no special group such as MJ-12 exists, unquote. But they did then, and they still do now. Further, the Psalm 101 document dated 1954 states, quote, the greatest threat of this time arises from the acquisition and study of such advanced technology by foreign powers unfriendly to the United States, and it is for this reason that the recovery and study of this type of material by the United States has been given such a high priority, unquote. Later in the training manual, in a section entitled Living Organisms, the United States government laid down its strict policy of denying the existence of extraterrestrials and their technologies in the interests of national security, even as the government's high priority was to retrieve and back-engineer this advanced technology. The Psalm 101 training manual states, quote, any encounter with entities known to be of extraterrestrial origin is to be considered a matter of national security and therefore classified top secret. Under no circumstances the general public or the public press to learn of the existence of these entities. The official government policy is that such creatures do not exist, and that no agency of the federal government is now engaged in any study of extraterrestrials or their artifacts. Any deviation from this stated policy is absolutely forbidden, unquote. But the truth is that the non-human creatures and their craft and technologies have been studied by the United States government for at least half a century. The Psalm 101 training manual is dated April 1954. Jumped ahead here. A time when President Harry S. Truman and Dwight D. Eisenhower ordered that all matters concerning extraterrestrial entities and technology were to be denied in the interest of national security. But since then, there have been a lot of leaks, and many out of deep frustration and anger. Today, in 2004, 50 years later, frustration and anger are the emotions behind one American scientist's whistleblowing leaks since September of 2002. 2002, right, Bill, or 2003? Two, you're right. He has worked underground at Area 51 from the mid-1980s to early 1990s and claims that he interacted face-to-face with a brown-skinned, large black-eyed, non-human kept inside a round clean room filled with a cold hydrogen atmosphere because the being could not breathe the Earth's oxygen-rich air. The man who will be talking in just a few minutes on his own, on tape, is named Dan Burisch, PhD in microbiology, and recruited by American intelligence agents when he was a very gifted science student in high school in the early 1980s. He was born on February 2nd, 1964, and is now 40 years old. And for those of you who were in the preceding lecture that Bill Hamilton just presented, he went over much of this in more detail. Dan Burisch began leaking information in the fall of 2002 to California computer software programmer, UFO researcher, and executive director of Skywatch International, Bill Hamilton. Dr. Burisch told Bill that he had conducted biomedical work on an alleged extraterrestrial at Area 51 for several years. Sorry. Is it focused? Yeah, okay. It seems like it needs to be. Is there anybody there who might be able to help with focus? Here is researcher Bill Hamilton on the left with Dr. Dan Burisch at the first videotape session in September of 2002. The tape excerpts that I am sharing with you were videotaped several months later on June 7th, 2003, with the cooperation of Dr. Dan Burisch, who now sees himself as a whistleblower who wants to be free of government control on his life and work, and would like to tell the public the truth about extraterrestrials as he understands it. He himself is not certain why he is still alive, or at least he used to feel that way after speaking out. He wondered, except that his biochemistry knowledge and abilities are considered to be a major help to the United States government's effort to understand this JROD agenda. Dr. Burisch said that several dozen times that he was asked to put on an astronaut space suit and that he was taken underground at the Papoose Mountain S4 Area 51 lab facility into a round room filled with hydrogen atmosphere that was referred to as the clean sphere. And we're talking here about Nellis Air Force Base, and over here is the area having to do with underground facilities that Bill talked about just previously with details that I understand from others is underneath the Papoose mountain range physically, is protected underneath the hills and then goes down. Bill says 5 levels. The 5th level, one only accessible by an elevator that is well controlled to get down to this clean sphere. In his assignment, he was to enter the clean sphere and approach an entity that his majestic 12 superiors described as extraterrestrial. The being was called JROD, and that name JROD came from the being who told Dr. Burisch that it stands for the number 15 as depicted in something related to Egyptian hieroglyphs, something that is shaped like a J and a rod. Dan Burish was told that there was a serious medical problem with the J-rod, and here is a drawing not by Dr. Burish, but by Bill Uhouse, that some of you who were in the room earlier heard Bill Hamilton talking about yet another person who had information about the J-rods, had drawn this particular picture of what he said, that Bill Uhouse said that he had knowledge of, and that Dr. Burish, in his assignment, was to enter this clean sphere to extract tissue from the being's arm for microscopic study. Dr. Burish learned that the J-rod had a nerve degeneration disease that caused skeletal and muscle weakness and loss of body heat. Now, in the June 7th video segment that I will show you, it begins with Dr. Burish describing his first reaction in 1986, according to him on the videotape, which is almost 20 years ago, to encountering the non-human who could become agitated, as shown in this drawing by Dr. Burish, as he remembers an experience with this being. And this is underground at the S4 facility beneath the Papoose Mountains on the south end of Groom Lake inside of the Nellis Air Force Base complex. And now if we could go to the videotape and hope that the audio and all are there.
Feeling was I was looking at a giant insect. It's the best I can just off the cuff. It looked like a giant insect, being dark brown and hunched in a corner, very insectoid in appearance. It almost looked like it had an exoskeleton. I felt afraid inside because I was always told that monsters weren't real. It was fear, excitement, complete astonishment. It scared the hell out of me. The Brookings Institute paper was present, as well as several position papers clarifying the Brookings Institute. However, each of these that I was allowed into, they had separate folders and they had separate clips within them, inside these 3-ring binders. And I was told which numbers I was allowed to open up. And they were given to me on a card, and those are the ones that I was allowed to review during the times that I was allowed to review them. Most of the stuff, I mean, they had everything from military applications, physics of the craft, and I couldn't care less. I was more interested in taking in the biology issues. Just doesn't interest me, aside from the fact from the biophysiological interface between the hand, mind, and the craft, because they have on their hands a number of pads, and there are open nerves which are protected by various glycoproteins, and those glycoproteins are selectively pushed forward or sucked back via capillary action. Or they can be, through an active fashion, pulled back, and it kind of pulls a viscous sheath back and allows the J-rod to have direct interface with the craft. That interested me, although most of it at the time, and still some of it now, I have no understanding of. A lot of it has to do with electronics that I don't pretend to understand. I was most interested in looking at issues involving their histology, histopathology issues, including some autopsy photographs that showed disease processes which were naturally occurring within them, isolations of viral material, to include the protocols for new protocols which are being written as they're working, which is what we're doing. Which is really what we're doing. We're writing new protocols, new procedures as we're working forward. I mean, all of the old standbys are there, everything from electrophoresis to, you know what, to anything. But we're writing new protocols as we're going because this is not new territory, this is part of the fun alien territory.
How many beings have we had to work with?
I only met one. I'm aware of possibly 3 from the reading. And at that time, again, I was so stunned by what I was doing. A lot of it was getting by me. When I read the word extraterrestrial, I tunnel visioned. And when I finally believed and understood that it was, in fact, an extraterrestrial, no. No.
Okay, thank you. Just want to ask you a question about the telepathic communication, the nature of it. What is it actually like to communicate with one of these beings telepathically? What do you hear something in your head? Do you hear images, see images, or?
I can hear my voice. No, you can hear yourself think.
Sorry, can you do it, Bill?
Sorry.
Okay.
Habit, looking at the people there. I could hear my voice. However, the cadence, the affect was something that distinguished it other than me. It was no great booming voice from the heavens or anything like that, and I'm glad I do not have a proclivity to hear voices in my head, and have heard none since. But I could tell that it was somebody other than me, and I could tell because I felt drawn toward the subject that was sending the communication. When the J-Rod spoke with me, prior to the bombardment of the images, it was something that was part of me, but not part of me. I actually felt non-resident for a moment. It was almost an OBE type feeling. And then I could feel myself pull back and experience the sound. It was physical. It was more real than touching an object. And that's the only real time that I felt anything, more physical than physical.
Is there a sort of conveyance of emotion during these communications?
100% emotion. If he was upset, I could feel his pain. It got to the point where, as I was doing the needle introductions, I could feel what he was feeling. So as I would inject the needle under the integument and find my proper location prior to removing the sample, I could feel the needle entering him. So I could feel his feelings.
And that was June of 2003. Bill Hamilton and 3 others were in the room doing the videotape on this one. The first videotape was done in September of 2002. And today Bill was talking about the possible good news that he's been able to negotiate a retirement arrangement perhaps now with the government, because he has, I think, felt trapped with knowledge that he felt that the human family should be exposed to, and it's an ongoing story. I don't think that it is over yet, even if he's going to retire, but we will see. Bill Hamilton will continue to be the person who stays in touch with whatever communication there will be. And for those of you who would like to read in some detail about the Dan Burish case and the research work that has gone, I would like to, for those who may not know, to tell you that I've done, if I could go to slides, I've done a series of 8 reports at earthfiles.com concerning this case, and this is one of them that gives you an idea going back in time over the last couple of years with Bill Hamilton's help and Dan Burish's permission at distance to do some of this work. I think personally it's an extremely important whistleblowing story. And here is Bill Hamilton's website. He is executive director of Skywatch International, and you can keep up with a lot of the research that Bill is doing on the Dr. Dan Burish and the JROD entities as it continues to unfold. And his website is www.skywatch-research.org, and mine is www.earthfiles.com. Now, according to Dr. Burish, JROD's nerve disease is a serious problem, not only for the entity at Area 51, but is a serious medical problem for the being's entire civilization. And as Bill was talking earlier, we may be talking with time travelers that are us from a distant future in which time split because of a bizarre nuclear or other catastrophic event, and that we're caught in some kind of strange time loop in which we are coming back to our present, their past, in order to survive. Or maybe they are extraterrestrials based in Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 and the Orion system as now technically extraterrestrials. This brings us to one of the, what I would say, the real reason that Dr. Burish says that ETs are here, and that is to harvest genetic material from our Earth life in order to keep his kind alive in the present and the future. Further, Dr. Burish says Majestic 12 in the United States has made agreements with the ETs to provide medical treatment and allow genetic harvesting from plants, animals, and humans in return for advanced technologies that the United States has been trying to back engineer since at least the late 1940s and may have succeeded on several fronts. This scenario sounds very much like U.S. Air Force Sergeant Jim Peniston's description from the December 1980 Bentwaters Air Force Base incident in England. Sergeant Peniston said that he understood that what set down in the Rendlesham Forest were time travelers from the future who were desperate to repair a serious medical problem and considered genetic material from Earth life to be their, quote, Band-Aids, unquote, for survival. If the biochemist and the military man are correct, is that why tissue and fluids have been removed from animals around the world for at least 6 decades? This might also explain the references in the top secret Ultra Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit Summary Intelligence Assessment, quote, the extraordinary recovery of fallen airborne objects in the state of New Mexico between 4 July to 6 July 1947, unquote. The IPU intelligence assessment was dated September 4th, 1960 by the authority of Lieutenant General John A. Samford, Director of the National Security Agency, and approved by Alan Dulles, then Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and stamped Top Secret Magic Ultra. This is one of the documents leaked to Bob and Ryan Wood in their accumulation of the files on Majestic 12. On page 6 of the document, 5 alien bodies are described as they were found with a crashed aerial vehicle at a site on the northern end of the White Sands Missile Range in July 1947. The site is called LZ2 in the report, which means Landing Zone 2. Landing Zone 1 is defined as the notorious crash site between Corona and Roswell. A third landing, Zone 3, is defined as 30 miles east of Alamogordo. All 3 crashes are said to have occurred between July 2nd to July 6th, 1947, according to the MJ-12 report. paragraph 12 of the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit Summary Intelligence Assessment states, quote, "The most disturbing aspect of this investigation was that there were other bodies found not far from Landing Zone 1 between Corona and Roswell that looked as if they had been dissected as you would a frog. It is not known if Army field surgeons had performed exploratory surgery on these bodies. Animal parts were reportedly discovered inside the craft at Landing Zone 2 in the northern part of the White Sands Missile Range, but this cannot be confirmed," unquote. Dissected humanoid bodies and animal parts inside one of the craft must have scared President Truman and his colleagues so badly that they all agreed that a tight lid had to be placed on whatever the UFO phenomenon was, a policy of complete denial in the interest of national security, while they tried to learn more and figure out what they were up against. Thus, the National Security Act of 1947 that created the Central Intelligence Agency, the Majestic 12 Special Studies Group, and presidential executive orders that required everyone associated with the extraterrestrial investigation to lie and misinform under orders to the press and the public in order to prevent panic and to maintain national security. On top of the dissected humanoids and animal parts, there was another disturbing event that would also have provoked the Truman administration's decision to keep all of the real facts about UFOs and what was in them from the press and the public. In the year 1952, Truman's appointed Majestic 12 issued its first annual report as, quote, "A review of the President's special panel to investigate the capture of unidentified planform space vehicles by U.S. armed forces and agencies." Planform is a word that you find in some of the old documents, and when you go to dictionaries, you find that it is something that has a curved surface. In the work that I did on the alleged wedge-shaped vehicle associated with the bismuth magnesium metal I talked about in my workshop, the word planform was also being used by people who were talking to me about what they had been exposed to. On top of the page 5, let's see, where are we? We're at the first annual report. On top of the dissected humanoids and animal parts, there was another disturbing event, and this is going to be in this, now we're in the document, some people call it the White Hot MJ1 document. On page 5 of the top secret MJ12 report, under a paragraph entitled, quote, "Biological Warfare Programs," it states, "Biological warfare programs in the United States and UK are in field test states. Discovery of new virus and bacteria agents so lethal that serums derived by genetic research can launch medical science into unheard of fields of biology. The samples extracted from bodies found in New Mexico have yielded new strains of retrovirus, not totally understood, but give promise of the ultimate biological warfare weapon. The danger lies in the spread of airborne and blood-borne outbreaks of disease in large populations with no medical cures available. Retroviruses are not even a common medical concept in 1947. Examples of retroviruses today are HIV, leukemia, and the deadly Ebola virus that causes its victims to hemorrhage blood from every orifice. Retroviruses are composed only of single RNA strand, which can end up getting healthy double-stranded DNA to incorporate the insidious RNA instructions into the genome sequencing and of the cells of the body or the creature in which the retrovirus is working, and then destroys ultimately the host. On page 9 of the top secret MJ12 report, it states, quote, "The panel was concerned over the contamination of several SED personnel upon coming in contact with debris near the power plant of the craft and the craft security. One technician was overcome and collapsed when he attempted the removal of a body. Another medical technician went into a coma only 4 hours after placing a body in a rubber body bag. All 4 men were rushed to Los Alamos for observation. All 4 later died of seizures and profuse bleeding. All 4 were wearing protective suits when they came in contact with body fluids from the occupants. Autopsies on the 4 dead SED technicians are not conclusive. It is believed that the 4 may have suffered from some form of toxin or a highly contagious disease. Tissue samples are currently being kept at Fort Detrick, Maryland. The panel was also concerned with the detection of airborne release of radiation over the state of New Mexico. The AFTAC detachment from McClellan Air Force Base has conducted several airborne monitor flights over crash site L2. That was the landing zone 2 in the White Sands Missile Range. Radiation readings indicate a high neutron count was recorded as the plane flew over the site. Neutron count dropped off as the plane flew a considerable distance from the site. A report has been filed with USAIDS. In the opinion of the Senior Atomic Energy Commission medical officer, current medical equipment and supplies are wholly inadequate in dealing with a large-scale outbreak of the alien virus, unquote. So what I've shared with you today are some excerpts from documents that have existed now in the ongoing work of Bob and Ryan Wood, and the firsthand testimony from Dr. Dan Burish through the strong efforts of Bill Hamilton, in which it seems to me that we are at least getting closer to the edges of details that would explain why this government, for half a century or more, has been so aggressive in its efforts to keep everybody in the press and the media from the truth, to the point that maybe some people were actually killed to keep all of this in the interests of national security, totally out of any political acceptability in the world community mind. And that is where we stand today in Gaithersburg, Maryland, at the first Exopolitical Conference, in which Steve Bassett and many of us feel that the time is long past for this information to be shared with the human family. If these unpleasant details are the underbelly that our government and other governments have been trying to keep from us for so many decades, we are now at 2004, and the planet and the human population is still standing. We don't know what the future might bring. We don't know what the truth is about the timelines, the time paradoxes, and anything else that might be coming down the pike. But if you agree with me that I feel that everyone deserves at least to know what the government of the United States, the government in England, and our allies knew in the 40s and 50s that scared them then, but we're still here. Don't we deserve now to know everything that they know? Thank you very much. I have just about 3 or 4 books left, and I'll go out to the table for anybody who would like to talk with me and get them. And I don't know, it's 3:30, and I know we started late, and it's probably better not to go on with questions here. So thank you again.